Hey everybody, it's Barbara Biziou, and I am so excited to have Cole Baker Bagwell with us today. As you know, we're doing a lot for Women's History Month, and she is a woman that you need to know about. She is a mindfulness coach. She is a mindset coach, which I love that. She's also the host of a podcast. She grabs the mic, as well as doing a lot of other things. But what I really want to talk about with her today is how she has brought the concept of mindfulness into the corporate world and the tech world. And she really helps people understand because there's so much misunderstandings around mindfulness. We know that what people really think it is, but science has caught up. And I love that you could explain everything, Cole, through science. And you have a bigger view on technology. And we're also going to jump into the whole idea of how do we deal with AI. So I want to turn it over to you. But before you start with that, just give a 2-minute thing on how you really got interested in this, because not everybody gets interested in mindfulness and quote spirituality and then brings it into this other arena. So where was your entry point?
Thank you so much for having me, Barbara. I love every single second that we get to spend together, even if it's across the screen. You're just such a delight and a wonderful soul. And so thank you for hosting me today. I appreciate the opportunity. Okay, so my mindfulness story goes back to a desperation story when I was 24 years old. I had just entered the corporate world and I was showing up for all the wrong reasons for somebody else and really abandoning all of the things that I knew to be most true about myself. I started to experience an enormous amount of stress, anxiety, not sleeping at night. I was having trouble thinking during the day, and a friend invited me to a yoga class. And I had the great fortune of my yoga teacher who said to me, "Yoga's great, but mindfulness will change your life." And it was such a profound,
Yeah.
like this crazy profound statement, Barbara, like so many of the ones you've made that have really stuck with me that I find myself saying them every day. So these great teachers I've had in my life. And it was such a big statement that I got really curious about what made that true. And back
Mm.
then, it's been a minute since I was 24.
Not
There
that long.
wasn't well, thank you. It's been like 3 minutes since I was 24, but there wasn't a lot of science around mindfulness. There was a lot of confusion, especially here in our Western culture. Mindfulness has been around for 2,500 years, but we, in our Western culture, had this idea of sitting and chanting and meditating and not really understanding that mindfulness is a cognitive skill. So
Right.
across those years, 32 years now, I have been practicing, I've been researching, I've been reading everything that I can find on the science of mindfulness. The great news is the science is catching up and proving how powerful this practice is. So somebody 2,500 years ago, they already knew this. Or,
Right.
the ancient wisdom you draw from all the time, right? It's already there for us. It's let's get out of our own way and discover what's possible now.
I love that you said about the science because when I first started teaching stress management or emotional intelligence, all of this, people, oh, you know what they always ask me? Oh, do you teach yoga? And it's like, no, I don't teach yoga. I'm more about spiritual and mental emotional resiliency and giving people tools. But they all, even today, I say what I do, and people say, oh, you're a yoga teacher. No. So I love that you bring in, and I've learned a lot about the science of it from you too. I have to say that I love learning about it. And I think it's very important for people to understand how this actually changes your brain and how it affects our behavior and what we create, because we know right now the world is in chaos. I don't have to say anything. Anyone watching this is in the middle of the chaos. And how do we deal with this in a way that is grounded and can move us forward so that we're not caught in the tsunami of emotions that are out there right now?
Yeah, you mentioned emotional intelligence, and I want to come back to that for a moment because as we look at the science, emotional intelligence has 5 pillars. The first one is self-awareness. Well, it's very difficult to have self-awareness without firstly being mindful. So, developing this cognitive skill of mindfulness. So, a lot of people define it in a number of different ways. I love the way John Kabat-Zinn defines it. He's the father of mindfulness here in our country. And he says that mindfulness is paying attention on purpose without judgment to what is happening in this present moment. So there's a lot going on there. But it's this practice of paying attention on purpose. It does not mean we will be perfect. It does not mean we will, never say something regrettable or have a moment where we lose control of our emotions. We're human beings, perfectly imperfect. But it does mean that we will have greater awareness when those things happen, when we make those choices, and we are able to correct them. Um, for me, it also means, you mentioned the chaos that's going on right now, lots of uncertainty happening. For me, it also allows me to frame how I exist in the midst of all that is around
Mm,
me, because we have agency, Barbara. We have that power every single day. And that is the thing that, if anyone listening takes anything from this today,
right,
that is what I want them to know, that regardless of what is happening, if you're getting divorced, if you've lost your job, you've been laid off, have unwell people in your life, you have,
right.
what's going on in our country that is affecting the rest of the world in such a dramatic way, those things are all external to us. So if we focus our energy there on fixing all of that, we will become very depressed, very anxious, and everything goes to hell in a handbasket. But when we can say, I can acknowledge all that is happening around me in this moment, any of those things that I've mentioned and anything else that's on people's list, and we can say, but I know I have the power to control the way I feel and the way that I respond to all that is, total game changer, total
Yeah.
game changer. And that is true in personal life, and it is true in business. It is true around, across the board.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so much more power in being proactive than reactive. And
Yep.
again, I think the majority of people right now are in the reactive state, not the proactive. And this is the time, as you said, to know that you have the power to decide how you're going to feel, which will affect your energy level, which will affect your ability to come up with new solutions and new ideas, to take conscious action and to start to make a difference in places that, you really want to see, even if it's tiny. It's too big right now to try to fix everything. So starting small. And, I love that idea. Yeah, it's really, really important. And I know you work a lot with technology, and
Yep.
in corporate. So let's talk a little about AI, which people are so freaked out about. We know that it has its good points, but there's a lot of people right now who are terrified. I mean, my son, who's an animator in California, people are being laid off right and left, a lot of it because of AI. So there's a lot of fear going on in a lot of industries right now about how it's going to affect people. Will you lose your job? What's going to happen? So how do you look at that?
So AI is not new. It's been around for what, 80 years. It's not new. It's just the application of AI is new, and the way that we are understanding how we can use AI is very new. So here's something else I want to be really clear about. Technology was created to make our lives easier, our human lives easier. Look at your computer. Remember the days, Barbara, where you had a typewriter and you had to change the ribbon, and you had, like, you were keeping up with all of your bills with your checkbook and all of that. Well,
Right,
now we can manage our bills online. We can, hit the delete button on our computer. And so this is just one example. Our cell phones were designed to make our lives easier.
right,
Now, the technology in and of itself is not bad, but the choices that we have made have created very addictive habits that have created a lot of human suffering. So, these phones, like, it cracks me up when people say, well, I don't want to put my information in here. I'm like, you have a tracking device in your hand all day long. It's your cell phone, right?
right.
So I was out at dinner the other night with my husband and my mom, and I was so sad. There was a family sitting there, two gentlemen, a woman, and a young child who was probably about 8. As they were waiting for the food, all of the adults had their phones and they were scrolling, and this little girl was looking around, just, she didn't know what to do. She had no one to engage with. She was sitting essentially alone at the table. So is the technology bad? No, no. certain parts of technology are designed to target the weakest parts of our brain. That's what brain science shows us. So, social media is one of those examples. It targets our dopamine or our reward center in our brain. So, those likes that we get, the hearts that float up, it's not just nice. It's not somebody like saying, oh, here's something pretty. No, it's designed to keep us addicted and to bring the behavior back to the phone. And it's this vicious cycle. So in that example that I gave you of the family, all they had to do was put the phone down, and the phone would have served its purpose of somebody needs to reach you, they can. But that presence, that's where we come back to like mindful choice, that presence of we're
Yeah.
out at dinner, there's a little child here, we're together, let's engage. Here's my prediction about AI. So I want to address the fear for a minute because I actually work in this industry. I do not believe that AI is going to take over all the human jobs. I do not. I do know based on the research that I have done, that is, tons of papers that I have read from various think tanks around the country, that the two most critical human skills for us to double down on right now, critical thinking and emotional intelligence, which brings us back to mindfulness. So I have a prediction I'm going to make here with you today
Okay.
on 2025. We are going to reach this tipping point here with AI, which will call us back to more of the behaviors we had pre the big technology explosion. So I'm talking about like showing up in the office and being together. Companies are already moving in this direction. They've realized screens are fine and we can get things done certainly. And there's nothing that beats people being shoulder to shoulder across the room from each other in the same space. So there's one example. I think that we are going to, go back to more intentional communication. I know that in the universities that these classes will become just as important. The critical thinking, emotional intelligence, mind growth mindset, just as important as how do we use AI. So AI it has this wonderful opportunity to help us with some of the most profound human problems, climate change, poverty, cancer, like the really big things that it will take us decades more to solve. But because it is grabbing all of that data from all of these sources in this lightning amount of speed, which is doing environmental impact, I'm going to add, we've got to figure that out because it's hugely environmentally crap for the planet. But because it's aggregating all of that within seconds, we are able to have answers that can get us to the next best place for some of these really profound problems. Now, if you've got a lower level job and you're just entering data all day, yeah, your job's probably going to go away. But like your son with the technical animation that he was doing, I think we're going to hit this wall where we realize that maybe in this moment that human creativity is not valued as much, but I predict that it will be in pretty short form because I don't know if you've seen anything that's generated by AI, the images, they don't even come close to what human beings can do. Not yet,
No,
anyway.
the moment, will they evolve? I don't know. Yeah, I agree with you. You could tell right away. And I mean, there was a political video put out today. We don't have to mention who put it out, of this, future in the Mideast. And,
Mhm.
it's obviously AI. It's not, you could tell that it's not a human, but it still is affecting a lot of people. It's still having an impact. So
Absolutely,
yes,
it's going to
I,
have
I
an
do
impact.
agree with you. Nothing is going to replace, I don't think, that critical thinking and, but you're right, it's an interesting conversation. Yet, going back to where we started, if you are mindful and if you have the techniques to bring you back to center and to be grounded, then you make better choices. Otherwise, you're just
Right.
reactive and fear-based, and it's like, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job. Oh my God, I'm going to lose my house. And like you said, some people may, but in that case, they need to be grounded enough to go, okay, so what's my next step? Where can I move forward and use my gifts and talents in a way that will support me and my family and the earth? But you can't do that if you're just in reactivity and fear.
No, you can't because what the mindset science shows us is that when our levels of stress and anxiety are elevated, our cognition diminishes, our ability
Right.
to focus diminishes, our memory diminishes, our creativity diminishes, like all of these things, our sleep goes to shit. It's all of it. Here's what I want to say about AI. Just because we can doesn't mean we should. So here's what I mean. Can AI do a boatload of research? Yes. But information, and Yuval Noah Harari makes this beautiful point in his book Nexus, information and knowledge are not the same.
Right.
Information and knowledge are not the same. So you can have, ChatGPT go out and do a bunch of research for you, and you can bring it back, but the knowledge comes in from actually doing the work. I mean, when I was in college, I had the Dewey Decimal System. I had to like open the drawers, look for my card, go through the
Right.
library racks and find
I
my book.
remember. Yeah.
Then I had to go to the page and I had to actually do the work. Well, my brain was mapping information. It was learning in that moment. And so, and then
You
taking
have
what
to
I
understand that some people watching this will not know what you're talking about at all.
So I want you to imagine it was like a drawer full of tiny little cards that had a number,
Libraries
which
used, right,
libraries, right? It had the name of the book, it had the number, the aisle, the shelf, everything, the
right,
section of the library. And then you had to go on like a treasure hunt to find your book. Well, there was
right,
value in that. I mean, you're working for something. But not only that, what I learned, then I had to employ my critical thinking, aggregate that information together, and then apply that knowledge to something, whether it was an essay I was writing or a project I was working on. And that application, that process is
right.
what creates knowledge. So just because we can does not mean we should. So anything that you can do that relies on your critical thinking and your emotional intelligence, don't hand it over to AI. You are making yourself worthless at that point. Take those things on and hold those things dear to your heart and in your mind and in your practice. And use AI for something else. I mean, there are a whole lot of wonderful applications, like I said, but these kind of everyday things that we're doing, I don't think it should ever replace human communication. I don't think it should be writing our emails. I don't think it should be writing our podcast or our titles or our blog post or any of these things. And a lot of creators are leaning on it to do that. And I will tell you right now, Barbara, that when I read something that is AI generated, I can read about two sentences and I know because that human sentiment is gone. It won't always be the case. AI is getting smarter, it is getting more powerful, and it is learning from us. So remember, every single keystroke that we make, every word that we share in a digital form, including this one right now,
Yeah.
there is something behind it that is capturing the data and it will learn. So keep that in mind. Be mindful as you're using AI. Know that, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And focus on the things that make you most human: your beautiful brain, your heart, your value system, your ability to be mindful, to learn, and to grow. Hold on to those things like your life depends on it. That's what I would
I love
say.
that. And I would say also that this is something for leaders to really embody, because if you are the head of a company, you are a CEO, you're a VP, whatever, unless you understand that and are coming from that place, you're not going to be able to share that knowledge and that information with the people who work for you. And I love that, like I said, that you work really in corporate America, because the quote new age community understand that, or at least they try to understand it. So it needs to be brought into mainstream business for sure. And it's starting. It's definitely starting, and you're one of the pioneers in that, which I love. That I love that you bring it into tech. That blows me away, that it's fabulous that you work with so many people who are coming from a very logical, science-based, view of life, and you explain it in terms that they understand, which is fabulous.
Well, science is science, and we put it's funny in our society we still put a lot more credence in science than faith.
I
And
know.
there are intersections between both. But the science is so mind blowing, especially the science around consciousness that's coming out. That we're discovering, neuroscientists are discovering that consciousness is not coming from my brain or your brain. It is like, I think of it like a river of energy out
Right.
there. So again, the takeaway message, there are a couple here. Number one, remember the agency and the power that you have for your own life and your own well-being, for your own mindset, because it is there all day long. You just have to choose it. So develop the cognitive skill of mindfulness, and it will help you get to the right place. Not overnight, it takes practice,
Right.
but you will get there. Number two, be fierce when it comes to keeping your critical thinking really sharp, and embodying emotional intelligence and getting more curious about these things that make us most human. Stay there, because that is so important. That is the beautiful gift that we all have. And then the third thing I would say, like with regard to AI, let the fear go, because you can be aware without being terrified. So look at the patterns and ask yourself, okay, in the new world, where do I want to be? Where do I want to fit? Maybe you've been working at a job as a lawyer for the last 20 years and you say, I really want to be a massage therapist. Great. What's keeping you from doing that? Go ahead. Go become a massage therapist. Or maybe you want to open your own business. And now is the great time to open that tiki bar in, Tahiti that you've always dreamed of. Fine, go do it, because guess what? AI is not going to be serving drinks on the beach in Tahiti or massaging somebody
Right.
or being a plumber or electrician or whatever, right? So, and let's replace the fear with
I love
optimism.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that is such an important message. And being that this is Women's History Month, I am such a believer that women are going to be the way showers of this next stage. I really do. That we understand, and I'm not talking about anything to do with gender right now, but that divine feminine energy is about compassion and intuition and curiosity and connection and unity. And we need to really integrate that into the more logical, structured, parts of our brain and bring them both together right now. And you're doing that. So, what's the best way for people to find you? And they need to listen to your podcast too, which is wonderful.
Thank you. I love doing the podcast. It's so much fun. It's called She Grabs the Mic. It's on Apple, Spotify, just most every streaming platform. Would love to have you join. We hit 32 countries last year. So thank you for
Hey,
every 32 countries who was listening. That's amazing. And then people can find me on my website, which is colebakerbagwell.com, COLE, bakerbagwell.com. Yeah, those are the best
fabulous.
ways.
Well, I am so excited that I'm doing this because I haven't done my YouTube channel in a while, and I realize I love to do it and I love to share my favorite people with everybody. And you're one of my favorite people since you came to my vision workshop a few years ago. It's like I love when really smart, open, curious people come to workshops, and then I develop a friendship with them as well. It's not just a student, teacher, whatever. I learned from you, we share, and that intergenerational is so important right now too, that we learn from each other. So just that you shared the Dewey Decimal System with some millennials now who probably don't know what the hell you're talking about. They might go Google it. So it's fabulous. And thank you so much for being here. And we're going to do it again for sure.
Thank you, Barbara. And before we sign off, I want to give you a big shout out too, because I think I attended your first vision workshop like 4 years ago, and it really changed my whole landscape for the year. And every
Mhm.
year I go, because you are so powerful and so so well versed in everything that you have to offer human beings as your best human self, and it is from the most authentic and wonderful place. And I'll tell you that every year that I go back and look at my vision board that I do with you, I can see every single bit of evidence that I have accomplished those things. So you helped in that
Mhm.
workshop frame my mindset and help me focus on those things. So this is evidence, everyone listening, that when you focus, if you can see it, you can make it real. And Barbara, you help us see it and help us make it
Um,
real. So thank you so much.
oh,
I
thank
appreciate
you.
you. Yeah,
Mwah.
thanks.
Thank you, everybody. And till next time, take